Yo, what's up YouTube? Welcome back to another Raz Plays review. So as you guys just saw, I'm having a hard time in dealing with these Intel 13th Gen temps. But in today's video, we're gonna hopefully solve that issue with these bad boys. So for those of you who don't know, this is the Thermal Grizzly CPU contact frame. This basically applies even pressure all around your CPU, your Intel 12th or 13th Gen CPU. Instead of the stock ILM, which provides pressure in only 2 individual mounting points directly in the center of the die, which I mean, I'll show that later, you guys will see that. This provides an even pressure all around the processor, or the IHS to be specific. And what that does is it helps flatten the processor when you actually apply pressure onto it. Whereas the stock ILM kind of puts too much pressure directly in the center and warps the CPU, not giving good flat contact to the cooler or whatever you're using. I'm using an AIO. So yeah, we got this from Thermal Grizzly, which is a company by Derbauer. If you don't know him, check him out on YouTube. He makes great content. Next up, we got the lapping tool, also by Thermal Grizzly. It works with the contact frame to apply pressure to the processor as you lap it. That way you can make sure it's 100% flat, even whenever you install it back into the board and there's actually pressure applied to the processor. Lapping basically removes material from the IHS and reduces the distance that he has to travel from the actual die itself to the cooler. By reducing the distance it has to travel, it can more efficiently transfer to the cooler and thus be removed from the CPU. So with both of these together, hopefully I'll reduce my temperatures or at least give myself a little more overclocking headroom. I'm going to do some benchmarks before and after so you guys can see what kind of temperatures I get. I'll of course do some charts. So yeah, for now let's go ahead and get into the unboxing. First we'll start with the CPU contact frame. Alright, here's the CPU contact frame. On the back here, just talks about how it lowers CPU temperatures, easy to assemble, high compatibility, anodized aluminum. I know that it is made from aluminum, and they did have to find a particular anodizing process to get it to work. Something about aluminum is extremely hard to anodize and prevent it from being conductive, so they had to do some special process that took quite a lot of R&D. Whoops. Alright, we're all good. I accidentally dropped that on the glass SkyPad. We just got that. I'm going to be doing a video on this pink SkyPad I got, limited edition, so be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for that. Alright, so we got manual here, Allen key to tighten it up, and the contact frame itself, they do ship it in a little bubble wrap to help protect it, and seal of approval, Thermal Grizzly himself. Alright, and here it is in all of its beauty. Wow. Little discoloration on the side. I'm not sure if I can clean that up, but we will see. And here you can see where it lines up perfectly on the inside of the CPU and provides even pressure all around the rim. It's a little dirty. I will get that cleaned up before we install it. And here's the lapping tool. On the back, simplifies CPU grinding, protects the 12th gen or 13th gen contact frame, CNC machined acrylic glass, complete kit with sandpaper. Go ahead and get it open. Should come with a few different grits of sandpaper, 400, 1200, and 2500 grit. Alright, here is the contents. Let's not try to drop anything this time. Alright, so it looks like you got your different grits of sandpaper here. It's 2500, 400, and 800. They're quite long, so you can do long strokes, it seems. Obviously, a little manual, QR code. And then we have, it looks like screws to hold down the contact frame, as well as a little Allen wrench to tighten those screws. And then the lapping tool itself, which is what you will tighten down the processor into using the contact frame in conjunction with this. Wow, really nice and shiny. Beautiful. Has a little arrow right here, not sure if you guys can pick that up, which shows you exactly where to put the arrow that should line up on the contact frame itself. You can see it's CNC machine, and this is where the CPU will sit, and it's quite beautiful. All right, let's go ahead and get the CPU out of the computer and get to lapping. Alright, and I gotta get the CPU out of the socket here. I just want to show you guys really quick. This is what I was talking about here. You can see the 2 little tabs on either side of the CPU. Just holds the CPU down at the center. They're really small and put all that pressure just on little tiny tab. What that does is, like I said, create that concave. You can see in the center where the paste has gooped up, and on the edges, it's almost like there's no paste. It has so much pressure on just the edges, whereas the center is being squashed down, flying all that up. So it's not making very good contact contact. And that's what our goal here is to fix. All right, and here we are. Going ahead and tape down the sandpaper that came with the kit, the lapping tool kit. This is the 400 grit we're gonna start out with. Already got my CPU out here. It's a 13700KF. First thing we got to do is go ahead and get the CPU into the lapping tool itself. You guys see there it has a channel cut out for the SMDs on the bottom of the CPU. Just go ahead and drop it down in there like so. And then we'll slap our CPU contact frame on top of that. And the contact frame will sit there and hold it down with pressure. Once I get it on, I'll show you guys the tolerances we have with this. It takes 4 screws here. Let me go ahead and get these in. Now, just like when you are mounting the CPU contact frame into the board itself, you want to have even pressure here whenever you're tightening it down onto this lapping tool, and that's going to simulate the even pressure that you're going to apply whenever you put it on the board itself. So we just barely twist it with your fingers until the screws stop. Once they stop with your fingers, once we get all 4 of them to stop with just our fingers, we're going to go ahead and do a quarter turn for each screw, and that will finalize the tighten. You don't actually bottom out with this contact frame, that would be bad. All right, now we got it in there, we tighten it down, it's solid. It's going to be extremely hard to tell, but you can lap the CPU before you touch the acrylic. The thing that's going to stick out first here is the CPU. So when I lay it down, that's the only thing that's going to be touched. There you can see it looks gorgeous through that lapping tool. All right, let's get going. You do need to add a few drops of water before you start. So we'll do that here, preferably distilled water. All right, that should be decent enough for now. You don't want to flood the thing. Go ahead and spread that around. Maybe a touch too much water. And it's also very important whenever you're lapping that you have something 100% flat, which is why I'm using my glass sky pad. Maybe not the best thing to use my brand new sky pad for this, but it's all I have. All right, first few strokes here. Feels very sketchy to be sliding my CPU across this, but here we go. Go ahead and start lapping. Already you can see some of the unevenness. It's taken a lot of material from the bottom, but not so much from the top. I'm gonna use 4 hands here to try to make it as even as possible. And you want to apply slight pressure, but not a ton. You just want to make sure that it's flat, but you don't want to grind the thing away. I mean, you want to try and make it as even as possible. That's the whole point of it. Stopping every once in a while just to make sure, checking. So it looks like the bottom is sticking out much more than the top. I'm gonna go ahead and flip it over and make sure that we're not unevenly grinding away here. Actually, I think I want to remove these side tapes. I don't want that to be affecting the grind here. I don't want it to be touching and accidentally lifting that CPU up somehow and doing it uneven. So we're just gonna go ahead and remove these. Oh yeah, I feel like that's much better. I'm not 100% sure, but I'll find out in a second. All right, we're still getting a little more of the way through. Haven't quite gotten to bare copper yet. We are getting there though. So it looks like mine was protruding a lot more on the bottom than the top. Just want to make sure these are all the same tightness. All right, as you can see, we are getting closer and closer to just bare copper. We're almost there. We want to use the 400 grit to take down the IHS all the way to bare copper and get 100% flat, and then we use the higher grits after that to smooth it out and get more of a mirror finish. As much of a mirror finish is up to you. It's totally not necessary. It's actually debatable whether the mirror finish helps. Some people say metal to metal contact is better, and the more polished the finish, the better, because the better the heat transfer. Some people say you want some grooves, like I've heard Kingpin say that you want grooves because it helps for the thermal contact adhesion to the CPU. So it is debatable. I'm just going for what I think works best for me. We're almost there. Oh man, this spot is so stubborn. We are almost there. Just a little tiny more. All right, and after about an entire hour of sanding, I don't know if it's supposed to take that long or if I just had a super uneven IHS, but I finally have gotten down to bare copper. So now I'm gonna go ahead and shine this puppy up with the next grits, the higher grits. There's gonna be 2 more stages. After I'm done with that, I'll show you guys what it looks like, and we'll go ahead and get it back into the computer. All right, here we are, finally finished. It only took about an hour and a half to complete. I didn't get it perfectly shiny. It looks like there's still a lot of grooves there, but I mean, it's almost a mirror. I mean, you can see the reflection in it. Pretty darn good. It looks like there's a bit of haziness over here on the side. I think whenever I got to the medium grit, it didn't go deep enough. You really want to make sure you get your best finish with that first 400 grit before you move on to the later grits, because the later grits are really just to polish and shine it up, not really to get the shape or form or finish that you want. So make sure you get the best finish you possibly can with that first 400, and then whatever's left over will shine out depending on how well you got that first 400. So it looks like I didn't get this side as well with that 400 grit, but that's just something to note in the future. Overall, it should be 100% flat. So let's go ahead and get it in the system and see what kind of temperatures it got us. Also guys, if you decide to do this, make sure that you clean the CPU very thoroughly afterward. As you can see, a little water got inside. You don't want any water or even copper material that's been sanded down shorting out any of these pins or anything. So make sure you clean it very thoroughly. All right, so now we're back at my computer. We're gonna go ahead and install the CPU first. Before installing the contact frame, Debauer does recommend that you leave the CPU in the socket. The reason being is just to protect the pins. There's a ton of pins on there, and if you damage them one, your motherboard could be toast. I'm doing everything upside down right now, so it's kind of hard to see. And since I removed all the lettering of the processor, you gotta use the arrow. You know the arrow goes towards the bottom. Boom, we go ahead and got the CPU in the socket now. Now I can go ahead and remove these 4 screws to get the ILM out. The stock ILM. We'll be replacing that. Wow, that is barely tight, like literally finger tight. We're lying. And then we can get the contact frame in. I'm just gonna be replacing this ILM. Screw, second screw, third screw, and fourth screw. Now in we go with the contact frame. Gotta get the screws for that. Okay, so it looks like we reuse the stock screws here. And you want to tighten each one of them finger tight first with just 2 fingers, like this, until they stop. And you want to go in a crisscross pattern. That way you make sure they're even. Alright, and once they've all stopped by finger tight, you're going to line up your tool and rotate each one a 1/4 turn at a time. So 1/4 turn, 1/4 turn, 1/4 turn, 1/4 turn. And theoretically, that should be perfect amount of pressure. If it's not, you will have memory issues where your CPU is not making contact with the proper pins for memory channels, and you're not detecting memory. So if that happens, you need to loosen it up and redo it. But for now, let's go ahead and get some paste on here, and we'll check out what kind of temps we get. Alright guys, we finally got it completely put back together and installed, so now's the moment of truth. Will she boot? I'm very nervous. Hopefully everything goes well. Looking good so far. Moment of truth. Uh-oh. Haha, she tricked you. Every time I completely turn it off and unplug the power supply and turn it back on, it does. Looks like it's booting. Let's go ahead and check out what kind of temps we got. Here we are, loaded into the Windows OS. We're in XTU here, and I got CPU ID pulled up. Looks like we're idling about 34 degrees, which is pretty good. The ambient temperature of the room is still 19.9 degrees Celsius, which is the same as earlier for our testing. So let's go ahead and start tests. Remember, we were thermal throttling before, so let's see if we still thermal throttle. Oh my god. Already you can see our temperatures are just, I don't even know what to say. We're not even breaking 90 yet. I mean, I just started the test, but the package is sitting at 83. We haven't even peaked yet. This is just absolutely insane. We're gonna go ahead and let the test run, see what our maximum temperatures are, see what our peak's at, let the fluid warm up a little bit, and then we'll be back. And of course we'll have some charts and comparisons so you guys can check out the difference it made before and after. But if this is a precursor to anything, I mean, this is insane. I don't know what to say. And finally, we've arrived to the moment you've all been waiting for, the benchmarks. First off, I want to say I know I wasn't extremely scientific with my testing methodology. Instead of doing one upgrade at a time, for instance the contact frame, and then testing the results, and then lapping the CPU as well and testing the results, I just went ahead and did both upgrades at the same time, and this is going to be the overall results I got from both. First up, we have the Intel XTU stress test, which at the beginning of the video is what you saw me getting the extremely high temperatures. The stock configuration is shown here on the black bars, and as you can see on the bottom, the max temperature we were hitting was actually, we don't know. It says 100 because that's when we thermal throttle and the Intel chip is trying to save itself, but we could be hitting well over 100 if the chip didn't thermal throttle to save itself. Our average temp in the stock configuration was about 98 degrees, and that's because it was dipping down ever so often from 100, while XTU was loading things, I presume. However, after doing the contact frame and lapping the CPU, as you can see, our max temp we hit was only 94 degrees, which is absolutely insane. I mean, we don't know exactly what kind of drop that was from what the maximum temperature in the stock configuration was, but 94 degrees maximum in a stress test on a overclocked Intel 13700K is absolutely insane. I will say, however, I do have E cores disabled, and this test is only with P cores enabled, overclocked to 5.8 gigahertz, running at 1.38 volts. But what's even more mind-blowing than the max temperature is the average temperature. We were sitting at 88 degrees on average in the test, which is absolutely insane. That's exactly a 10-degree drop from our average temperature in the stock configuration, which compared to the results that I've seen online is pretty good. Some people I've seen get anywhere from 6 to 10 degrees Celsius drop from doing these mods as well. Although on the contact frame from Durbauer's testing, he showed that some CPUs actually got worse temperatures from using the frame. So it will vary CPU to CPU. However, I believe lapping should help every Intel 13th or 12th gen CPU in getting better temperatures, due to the fact that when mounted under pressure, the surface of the IHS tends to warp from the center contact pressure of the stock ILM. Anyway, I'm extremely happy with the results. It allows me to either run my fans quieter and still get the same temps, or it allows me to have more overclocking headroom than I had before. For the time being, I didn't try to overclock the CPU any further. I just left it at the same overclock I had before for an apples to apples comparison, but I think the investment was worth it. Alright, in our next chart here, we're still showing the Intel XTU stress test, but now I wanted to show you guys the difference in the clocks that we were getting due to the extra cooling potential. So as you can see in our stock configuration, our average clock was 5.3 gigahertz, while our minimum clock we were dipping down to 5.1 gigahertz. That's due to the fact that we were thermal throttling and the CPU was dialing down the clock speed and voltage to try to save itself. Unfortunately, that also hurts performance. So you can see after we installed the contact frame and lapped the CPU, because we were hitting a max of 94 degrees Celsius on all cores, we were able to maintain the 5.8 gigahertz overclock throughout the entire test, and it never dipped down once. For me, this is a major benefit of installing the contact frame and lapping the CPU. Also in the future, when I upgrade to the 360mm radiators and increase my cooling potential, this contact frame and the lapping of the CPU will help me get the most out of that new cooling setup. Alright, and this is our last chart, which is a Cinebench R23 run. I wanted to do a test that would show you guys the benefit of having a sustained overclock instead of having thermal throttles and dips. So while I didn't change anything with my overclock or change any settings in the BIOS, simply by having better cooling and not hitting that thermal throttle limit on the new Intel 12th and 13th gen CPUs and sustaining that max overclock of 5.8 gigahertz netted us over 1,300 points in Cinebench. Before in the stock configuration, we were dipping down to 5 gigahertz in the clock speeds, and we hit a score of only 22,324. Now with the new contact frame and after lapping, we're sustaining that 5.8 gigahertz and hitting a score of 23,704. In the future, when I do the full upgrade to the 360mm radiators, I'm super excited to see if I can hit over 6 gigahertz on this CPU. If you guys also have a 13700K, you might be thinking that my score is pretty low, and that's, again, like I said before, for it because I have my E-cores disabled. So this score is literally just P-cores, which is insane. 23,000 on 8-core CPU is just like mind-blowing, which makes me super excited to see what Intel has for Meteor Lake and the future generations. But for now, I'm super happy with this CPU and what I'm getting out of it with this contact frame and after lapping. I think these products are 100% worth it. Alright, so overall guys, I think these products are 100% worth it. They dropped my temps by 10 degrees plus Celsius and helped me get some overclocking headroom, and even got my CPU to finally stay at 5.8 gigahertz no matter what the load. One thing I haven't talked about is price. So I got the CPU contact frame for about 35 bucks plus tax from Amazon. I ended up getting a good deal. I know that sometimes it can go around 50 bucks. I wouldn't personally pay that much. If you can't get it for 35, Thermalright makes a good alternative for about 15 bucks on Amazon. It does the same thing and even is pretty brainless. You don't have to worry about turning the screw only a quarter turn like on the Thermal Grizzly contact frame. You just tighten it till it stops and it's good to go. I do have one of those as well, and as you guys remember before, I was going to do a video on that one, but I'm going to save that for a cheaper build that I'm doing later on. For now, I just wanted to go ahead and stick with the Thermal Grizzly one because from what I've heard, it is a bit higher quality and better machine tolerances, so I wanted to put that in my high-end premium build. The lapping tool itself, I paid $20 plus I think $6 shipping on Amazon, so altogether I got them less than 60 bucks shipped, and for that price I would say that they are worth it if you're an enthusiast and you're looking to get the absolute most out of your system, or if you're just wanting to push your temps as low down as they possibly can get. Now along with that, $60 is a little bit of elbow grease you're gonna have to put in to lap the CPU. It took me about an hour and a half to completely do, and that's just because I wanted to get the IHS all the way down to bare copper, which you don't have to do. If you just want to flatten it out to get better temps, you could probably do it in half the time, but because I was such a stickler about getting all the silver off and getting down to bare copper, it did take me quite a while. Now that being said, the more material you remove, the better temps you're gonna get, because like I said before, the less distance the heat has to travel to be transferred to your cooler. However, there is a limit. You can only send down the IHS so much before you start hitting the acrylic block, and that's to protect the contact frame and make sure you're not sanding the contact frame, and you don't want to remove too much from the IHS because you might end up getting all the way past down to the die. Other than that, I do like the lapping tool, made the process pretty easy, and the fact that it kept pressure on the CPU while you're lapping it. It was also easy to keep the CPU very flat while lapping, and because it has those tolerances, it prevents you from damaging the contact frame itself. I think it's a really great tool, especially for 20 bucks if you can get it for that on Amazon. Another benefit to me is in the near future, I'm going to be doing a complete custom water loop in my Razer O11D PC. I'm going to be installing 360mm radiators along with a GPU block and CPU block, and the benefit of lapping whenever I do that is it's going to help me extract the most potential out of that water cooling system. The benefit of lapping and having a contact frame and transferring all that heat into the system is the more cooling potential you have, the more you're going to get out of it. So really for me, this is getting prepped for that, but also it's just to see what kind of temperatures I would get with my current setup. I am currently on a 280mm AIO, as I mentioned earlier, so this is the sort of performance you guys would expect if you were to do this yourself with a 13700KF. So anyway, I do recommend these products. If you guys enjoyed the video, I ask that you like and subscribe. It helps me a ton in getting my content out there and just shows me what kind of interest you guys have. If any of you guys are enthusiasts, leave a comment down below and let me know if you've lapped your CPU or if you've used something like a contact frame and what kind of temps it got you. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching and have a great day.